Sam and Jill, would y'all like to?
So let me talk to the patchwork quilt syndrome. So this is definitely one of the oopses that I think any large organization runs into regardless of what happens. So we have all bought technology. We all have to make the technology that we have work while we still go out and buy new technology to add on to the new place that we bought yesterday. The whole patchwork quilt, you really have to keep an eye out for, and you really have to understand when you bring a new piece in, what it's going to do to the rest of your quilt. And you really have to think about what the downstream impact is, not only of that standalone technology, but of everything else it's going to touch. And being on the biomed side, I can tell you the one thing that we end up screwing up more often than not is support. All right. So bringing in a new technology, yeah, the front of it, and Jill talked the nice, shiny, cool piece, is cool, right? We bring in this new cool thing. Supporting it on the back end, even to Melita's point, around the new touch panel pieces, it is crazy to put a support plan together and then to actually make it work. And so every time you bring in a new piece of equipment, you have to make sure it matches and it fits into your big patchwork quilt. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Something down the road is not going to work, and you're going to end up failing with that new piece of equipment.
I would also say, partner, with Sam's comment on patchwork and technology change. If you're going to go buy a new widget, and you need to make sure it is a widget that's going to work enterprise-wide within your organization, within the institution, or else it's going to become its own silo. And frankly, it'll end up in the closet because it isn't going to end up talking, it isn't going to end up integrating, etc. And we've just gone through this recently with an analysis of maybe considering a new vendor for technology, but then we've got 65 other pieces of the organization that are on the backbone of the existing system. So do we want to go buy new, and then we've got to go buy new plus 65? Or do we look at maybe upgrades? So standards are key to us. Sam's team does an awesome job. John's team does an awesome job of standardizing to where we can actually somewhat predict what we need to do in the facilities because we have very strong standards. And when we make a decision to change, we make it with a thorough assessment, to Melita's standpoint, a thorough understanding of all that it affects, because it may not just affect that piece of equipment that you're changing. Mm-hmm. The other thing we don't do, we're not a bleeding edge organization. Recommend people not be that per se, especially in healthcare. But I also say that the benefit of pediatrics is typically the adult hospitals have already done that testing for us. So most of the time new technology comes in, it's big, and then they have to little it down for pediatrics. So we benefit from that a little bit, but obviously there's specialized pediatric stuff that doesn't touch adults. So, but we don't tend to be bleeding edge. We can be cutting edge. But frankly, we try to just make the right intelligent decision. So my IT friends will say, well, there's this really cool technology, and all I think of as being the one that's managing the budget, dollar signs. So cool, shiny, we don't tend to go there simply because it probably has more cool, shiny behind it that you're going to have to pay for to bring it all up together. Sam mentioned around decisions. I've got a new term: decisions, undecisions, and redecisions. So those are my new terms. I really get mad when we have redecisions and undecisions. But to Sam's point, to be able to succeed, you've got to stick with the best decision you can make at the time. And frankly, you're going to have to suffer the risks and the consequences. If you don't make those decisions and if you don't stick with them, you will never get done. That's why architects don't tend to be architects on their own houses, because they never get done. So if you don't stick with the decisions it's not going to have a good outcome. It just won't. You're going to disconnect with the team, or you're just never going to get there.
I think last on our list is really, the breakdown of team dynamics. So I think, the one theme that you heard throughout this entire day was you've got to have the right people in the room, and that team is a village, okay? That village doesn't always get along with each other. All right. We all have competing priorities. We all have individuals that leave our organization and come into our organization and have to get used to our organizational culture and have to adopt the new ways that we do stuff, right? It is an ever-changing dynamic environment for which we have to then layer on all this other stuff, okay? Ultimately, I'm going to go back to the very cliche stance that it's all about communication, right? You have to over-communicate. The fact that Julie calls up Jennifer when she's sitting in a meeting and something red flag goes up is what makes our organization work. And so those team dynamics really have to be there, and that has to be something that you are on top of at all times. And so, ultimately, I can be sitting in a meeting, Jill can be sitting in a meeting, Melita can be sitting in a meeting, and somebody goes, oh, wait, I have this great idea, right? And 30 seconds later, we're on the phone to each other. Like, okay, what about this? What about this? What about this? That team dynamic makes this, all right? And you really have to work on building that team dynamic. It doesn't happen. It doesn't show up overnight. It needs TLC just like everything else. And so make sure that you're paying attention to that, because that culture and that team dynamic is really what makes us who we are today. And so I really advocate for doing as much as you can to build that team and keep that team working at the peak that it possibly can.
Well, thank you for a very enlightening panel discussion. We're going to